So now we are convening for our fifth and crowning roundtable in time of this very exciting series that we have seen over the last 2 days. Thank you so much for joining us here in physical form. As far as your etiquette on mask wearing, it is entirely your discretion. As far as interaction, no kissing, no hugging, but polite bows are always wonderful. As far as other things, please speak close to the microphone when you speak, especially those who are here in the room, because our sound quality will improve. And finish your contributions within the time frame of an emotionally felt 3 minutes, however long you feel the 3 minutes are, but it means to try to be, and I know you will be, working to be most concise in your remarks. And we want to welcome our partners and friends. First, thanks to our sponsor, firstly Executive Magazine and USAID. I mention Executive first simply because I think the mental sponsorship is really what helped us get together, but of course equally the sponsorship and the intellectual support that we have gained from USAID and affiliated projects has been helping us a great deal during these roundtables. I give the word right away to Yasser Akawi for welcoming us and telling us what we are aspiring to do today.
Thank you, Thomas. In brief, basically, the partnership with USAID and the LED project is geared towards trying to identify alternative solutions to common concerns in 5 industries. The purpose basically is, one, to allow for a more in-depth analysis and understanding and awareness creation around the challenges that entrepreneurship is going through in the tech ecosystem. And second is to be able to understand from you what would be appropriate initiatives that could mitigate and de-risk your industry, making it more attractive to investment, and of course maybe others that will allow us to either build capacities or a common understanding towards how to solve these problems. So the 2 hours we're going to be spending together, the first part will be to be able to validate or qualify and quantify the issues, concerns, and challenges through our discussions. And then our managing editor, Mr. Alexi Baghdadi, will brief us on, he's going to pick up from our conversation what are these issues and concerns. The second and last part, first, will be to try to brainstorm around solutions for these problems and issues. And finally, distill our discussion, and the last part, to agree on 2, 3, 4, maybe more, maybe less initiatives that are reasonably possible to be undertaken in the next phase of this project. So I know it's condensed, but we rely on your valuable input in that regard. So thank you again for being here, and thanks to USAID and LED for their precious partnership. And thank you, Tom. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you again, and welcome everyone. Welcome our online participants in this roundtable. Please forgive me if I cannot address everyone easily by name. There is a bit of a glare in my eyes, so if you just wave your hands and shout, then we will get to recognize you, and certainly we will work on equality basis between online and offline. So meaning we are not trying to prioritize any gender in this roundtable, but prioritize alternative speaking between online and offline participants for this hybrid roundtable with global reach of the 5 roundtables. And I'm very excited about this one in particular. One reason is simply that Executive has accompanied the journey of entrepreneurship in Lebanon since 2012 very intensely, already before then, but especially in these last 8 years, 9 years, and 7 years since the implementation or the announcement of the famous Circular 331. And that brings me to my very well surprised moment. When I looked at my calendar this morning, I thought, why am I talking about 331? I am on 331. It's March 31st. So we once had a cover of Club 331 in Executive. Now, then we had the Circular 331, and now we have Network 331 that we are developing. In this sense, I want to read a few points that were mentioned in documents that was given to us as information from the TIF projects sponsored by USAID. And this project, I also want to correct myself. I received executive summaries to the project, and I did not see the media sector entailed in the executive summary. I was informed that the media sector was part of the knowledge economy, but not in the executive summary line. In any case, for the sector overview of the ICT sector, the document tells me around 500 companies are directly involved in the sector, including 300 ICT companies and 200 startups. ICT workforce reaches somewhere between 15,000 and 18,000. Another statement, Lebanese ICT companies are highly export-oriented, and very importantly, I think, the education sector, the tertiary education of ICT and related skills, puts out between 1,200 and 1,500 graduates per year. I'm not sure how these numbers, of course, are influenced and changed after the outbreak of the economic crisis, but I am quite sure that these numbers in terms of the infrastructure and the human resource, human capital infrastructure of the ICT sector and all the adjacent or subsectors of the knowledge economy really give us reason to believe that this sector is extremely important as far as empowering other sectors. And just to jump to that end conclusion there for me, one conclusion of our roundtables was that we have to develop an integrated ecosystem of the most promising industries in Lebanon. And I believe that the ecosystem developed in the last 7 years at the BDD and even here at the Jeffinor Rotana, we are right in the middle of the sphere. I mean, if I look across the street, I look at ESSA. So smart ESSA, of course, comes directly to the forefront. We are in the nexus, and in this sense, I believe that we can expand from our place and build this network that will expand to all the important economies that we want to capture and connect in our initiative. So to start with, welcome again everyone on the virtual panel, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us and giving your opinion. So as Yasser mentioned, the first round is that you will please give your opinion on how is the challenges, how are the current states of the ICT and entrepreneurship ecosystem, tech entrepreneurship, fintech, everything involved at this point, March 31, 2021. So a lot of ones in there, and a lot of threes and a lot of twos. Are we in stage 1, 2, or 3? Are we going up? Are we going down? Your input, and I may start with the gentleman in the room, Nassif, and please just introduce yourself and speak.
Thank you, Thomas. So my name is Nassif Shalhoub. I'm a partner at Credly Advisors. We do financial advisory in mergers and acquisitions. So in terms of startups and ecosystem, I believe we are currently witnessing a significant downturn. The rise of the sector indeed came at the 331 announcement and the funds that were deployed. A lot of good things were done in terms of acceleration, in terms of creating capacity, in terms of creating logistic hubs, but not enough was done in terms of investor awareness and risk appetite. So when things went bad in terms of financial crisis, and when after the significant crowding out effect we have seen because of the high interest rates that were given by banks at the time to attract US dollars, the ecosystem is currently struggling, and a lot of the ICT companies or even the fintech companies that were created are migrating to the regional hub, which has become UAE today. Let's not shy away from saying it. So we are witnessing a migration. We are witnessing value deterioration even for the successful companies, because they established prototypes and they validated their concepts in the Lebanese market. Most of them still have the Lebanese risk on board. Are they exportable? Yes, definitely. Do they want, or do they have the capacity to export on their own? Some of them do, some of them don't. But if we want to look at the bright side, the talent is Lebanese. And the most compelling argument or proof is Anghami on NASDAQ. So the talent is Lebanese. It took them 10 years to get there, but anyone can do it as well. So I believe we are witnessing a temporary, call me an optimistic, someone that is addicted to optimism, but I believe we are witnessing a temporary decline, and all it takes is to prove to the startups that they are able to get funds still, and to value themselves based on export business while benefiting from a significantly reduced cost model. And if we can do that, I believe we can regain the shape that was earlier at the 331.
Thank you. Now I may add that I'm very happy that in this roundtable we have a good number of finance experts and funding experts, because that will help us develop, I think. But let me jump to Faris, if I believe, because you, as a practitioner, you have been with the ecosystem or with with the, well, what you call it, tech entrepreneurship for quite a while. So what are your current problems? What are the new barriers that you are facing?
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, okay, definitely the ICT sector.
Louder, please.
Yeah, definitely we have suffered from the financial crisis. This is obvious. But of course, the ability of that sector to export gives it a lot of edge, and actually allows to have hard currency come into the country. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are leaving. That's true. That's a fact. The biggest challenge for me, I think, is still, and it's a big one, is how to access capital and financing. So it's not only about equity side, but also on the financing side from the banks. Obviously, this has stopped completely. It is very difficult to run a business without access to finance, at least for working capital purposes. So that's a big issue that needs to be addressed. The second one is the export side. Yes, okay, a lot of companies have been able to export, but not as much as we would have liked to. So I think we have never also been able to do something in Lebanon which helps companies export in the direct sense of the meaning. So in other countries, there are institutions who are actually working on the only purpose of helping companies enter new markets and sell their products. And I think this is a big deficiency. Yes, we can rely on every company doing it by themselves, but we can get much better results if there was a certain engine somewhere that is actually responsible of that and taking the hand of these companies and guiding them, helping them open new markets. These are the biggest two challenges. Of course, there are the other challenges, but that are across all other industries, like the infrastructure. It goes without saying, especially the current situation of the internet that is becoming very problematic, besides all other issues that I think when talking about the tech, probably it's better to focus on our specific challenges rather than going across the board and mentioning all the other problems. 331 was good, but I would agree with the previous panelists that it could have been by far better. So still, let's not go back into probably this issue because it's over, obviously. What are the chances of attracting new capital to Lebanon? That's a big question mark. I don't know when we get to the session related to trying to find solutions, how we will be able to be creative in that sense. So practically, I would now sum up the two biggest challenges being the access to finance and the help that the companies require to open new markets.
Thank you. Gabi, may I jump over to you? Do you get envious about the startup ecosystem being more in the ICT sides of things, or do you believe that the startup ecosystem of tech entrepreneurship, fintechs, and all the new innovation companies will be integrated fully with the existing or legacy software development companies?
This is a very tricky question. The startup ecosystem that is today growing actually in Lebanon is not only an ecosystem that is related to ICT. It is also related to content, to digital content, but also to traditional business. So ICT is just a component, it's just an enabler. And I can only agree with Faris on the description he made of the circular 331. It was good, but it was not really enough, and it could have been much better. So the question is, how could it have been better, and who is responsible of making it just at this level? I will not go into those details because I mean, all of you, I think, you know already the answers. But what I can say is we need very urgently to find another vector or another engine or another process or another environment that will allow companies to thrive and to grow in the international market. I have made a study on the market recently for USAID, and some of the figures that you have mentioned in the beginning are coming from this study. And during this process of 3 to 4 months of surveying the ICT market, I interviewed a lot of companies. And I asked them very thorough questions related to their practice and to their turnover and to their markets. And I asked them, where can we do something to help you grow your turnover and create new jobs and create more jobs. And I have identified through their answers mainly six areas of intervention. The first one is the access to market. Everybody considers that accessing the market is more important than accessing the capital. And accessing the market is something extremely important for those companies because they are not used to operate in international markets. They are only used to operate in local markets. And the success stories that we have seen in the ecosystem are very special. I think we have more than one in this panel. Maybe you can talk about the model, in my opinion, the best model to access international markets, but it will be maybe later. The second point is access to talent. And the first panelist said that the human capital is present and this is our pride, but I can very confidently claim that we are not as competitive in terms of education than we should be. We should be much more competitive. This is why access to talent is a problem and an issue for the startups. The third point is access to capital. It was the third point that was discussed by all those who I interviewed over 100 companies. Access to capital was the third point. The fourth point was the infrastructure, the bad infrastructure that we have. The fifth point was the legal framework and the ease of doing business. And the last point was the life environment. Life environment meaning the environment that will allow employees to stay in the company or stay in town. I mean, in the companies and in the local market. So those are the areas of intervention that we should look at in order to allow companies to thrive, to export, and to create jobs. I will stop here because I have, many other issues I would like to discuss, but I will stop here for the moment.
Thank you so much. I may jump now back to the on-room, to Jihad. Tell us, you are in the middle of the ecosystem in terms of your functionality as accelerator. How do you see the problems that have developed in 2020? What are these issues for you?
Thank you. Look, I mean, the issues, there are common issues to the country. I don't know when, Gabriel, you did your study. It would be interesting, the number 6, life environment, where it stands today, because I think many people are just leaving because of the life environment. That said, I think we need to look back where we started from. Obviously, I'm not the one who's going to criticize BDL, but I mean, though we did not benefit from 331 as Smart ESA. But that said, I think the good side, it changed the culture. The negative side, it brought some laziness and a habit of being not always very professional and overspending money with a lot of the ecosystem. I'm saying this because I think one of the major problems in the aspect of the lack of talent, that yes, there is a lack of talent, this is a reality. You won't find in Lebanon, if you're growing a startup, digital growth specialists. You're not going to find, I mean, there are lots of talents lacking, but I think the major issue with the lack of talents is our soft skills, if I will be very honest. I'm seeing our startups go abroad, and they're facing problems with their teams, because even in the UAE, and Nasif, you were talking about it, and you're absolutely right, you're competing with British, you're competing with the US, you're not just competing with, it's beyond regional. And yes, there's a problem of talent. This is, I think, very important. And habits, the bad habits the ecosystem took. Okay, huge budgets and huge and overspending, and this is something we need to really get out of. So I think more professionalism is needed, if I want to speak about this. That said, access to capital is obviously a major problem, though I think we need to differentiate between, there's really three types of capital. There's the capital, if we want to talk about equity, there's the capital, let's say seed stage, and then Series A and above. I think Series A and above, a Lebanese company can find in the Arab world investment. You know, like Anrami did, you know, you set up your company elsewhere, you'll find the money. This is not the issue. The issue is the seed stage and pre-seed, where it's extremely difficult. You're going to get dollars, not dollars, if you go to angels. I mean, it's extremely complicated. And it's something I repeated so many times in many conferences. Basil has heard it many times. The moment Kafalat had to stop their grant, it started killing slowly the ecosystem. We need that initial 15,000, 20,000, 50,000 to be able to start startups. By the way, I want to open a parenthesis, just not about startups only, but if you go to the ICT sector, there were two types of ICT providers in Lebanon. There were the very professional ones, and there were the very unprofessional ones. You're going to tell me like everywhere, except that the economic structure of Lebanon in the previous years with the easy money made that even the unprofessional ones were able to make money and survive. Today, these people will die. There's no way they can continue. Only the very professional, the very serious will continue. So in a way, the crisis is an opportunity because it's rooted out a lot of people. It's going to root out the unprofessional. It's going to root out the ones that are not really serious. Even in the number of applicants in an accelerator like ours has been divided by 2. I know some people are saying we doubled our, but I mean, bullshit. The reality, the number of serious applicants has gone down. But these serious applicants are very good, much better than before. So I think it has rooted the ones that are not, you know, they were just doing it because there was money in there. That said, I just want to say something about, it's about if it's solution and you tell me don't talk about it, we'll talk about it later, but we have to look at Lebanon as a new economic model. The economic model has changed. For the startups, at least, but the same for the ICT sector, for the whole thing, this is a model, you know, we've been promoting a lot in 2020. You said what you changed, and now in 2021, is to tell our startups, look, go set up abroad. It's fine. Set up in Paris, set up in Dubai, and we've been helping them set up. We've helped, last year, 6 startups set up in Paris. We've helped another like 5 or 6 set up in the UAE. We've helped 2 set up in Saudi Arabia. We tell them set up abroad. The only condition we're asking them, and actually it's not very difficult, they're doing it, is do your back office in Lebanon. Build the back office in Lebanon. This is I believe, at least, this is the right economic model for this country. Though we need to ask ourselves, what type of back office in Lebanon? This is not going to be an artificial intelligence back office. You know, 1 or 2 companies may be able to do it, CME, one of them, but not everybody can do this. We need to build the basis and start with this. This is why at ESA, at least at Smart ESA, we started building a coding school, a coding program. We're building a center to help people set up abroad and export. We're even trying to raise a fund for seed. But again, the first thing is, let's change the way we look at things completely. More professionalism and outsourcing center.
Thank you. Now, Michel, what do you think when you hear these stories? What attracts Al-Fanar to think about supporting startups in Lebanon in this environment?
Okay, so first I wanted to say that the previous speaker made a very good point about the soft skills and the professionalism. And I think one thing that is lacking today is providing sufficient technical assistance to entrepreneurs. They are getting support in accelerator programs, but they need much more than that. They need support with their business plan, with their cash flow projections. They really need long-term support. So this is a point that's really important. The other thing that I wanted to mention is related as well to the point that was made about having Lebanon be the back office destination. I think that Lebanon can also be an outsourcing destination for the digital sector. And this is something that can really become very big because of the talent we have, because of the competitive pricing. And I believe as well, just to link it back to your question about Al-Fanar, that if we focus on helping even university graduates with coding boot camps, with giving them digital skills, we can have a very, very strong pool of talented freelancers that could be working for outsourcing companies. And I'll take the example of BOT, which is a social enterprise that Al-Fanar supports. BOT last year, their income grew by 230% despite the crisis, because they are focused on outsourcing of digital services. And because they have a pool of freelancers, they have 2,000 freelancers on their platform that are not weighing on their cost structure. They are freelancers. So this is also having a social impact, because these young people would not have other opportunities if it weren't for BOT. And what's interesting when we support organizations like that, that have a social impact and that are focused on supporting youth in the digital sector, is that we are also strengthening the social impact sector, and this will help us attract impact investors to the country. The global market for impact investment is a $715 billion market, according to the Global Impact Investment Network. And there's nearly none of this money coming to Lebanon because the social enterprise sector is not strong enough, because there aren't enough businesses with impact that are measuring their impact on vulnerable communities. If we are able to strengthen these organizations and to help them employ vulnerable individuals, then we can attract some of these institutional impact investors to Lebanon, and this is fresh money coming to the country. So this is, I believe, a huge priority for Lebanon. We should be supporting organizations that are using technology or that are outsourcing, providing outsourcing of services in the digital sector, and supporting the vulnerable community.
Thank you. You jumped already into a lot of solutions, I feel, but that is a positive thing, I think, I believe, because we are definitely in good need of solutions. Now, Basil, would you tell us what are you looking for? We heard about impact investing potential. We heard about social enterprise potential. What does Kafalat look for if you do right now, which companies to support?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. Definitely the ICT sector and the innovation sector is a very important sector at Kafalat, and we believe that it is a very important sector for Lebanon, because many of the speakers mentioned the importance of these sectors. So definitely at Kafalat and at the ISME fund, which is supported by the World Bank, we're trying to bring solution to solve part of the issues that were mentioned by my colleagues. Access to finance, let's go back to this major point because it's a common. Let me tell you something. As a VC fund, actually, we should not forget that we are a business as well, and we are suffering from access to finance. if we look at the landscape of VC funding in Lebanon, back to 2016, after the initiative of the central bank and other initiatives like ISME and USAID with IM Capital, we reached like 11 different GPs, what we call general partners, with several size of funds. However, if we look today, the majority of them, none of them actually, managed to raise a successor fund, what we call Fund 2 or Fund 3. ISME, unfortunately, with the World Bank, we've had a very nice discussion to get ISME to 2.0, but after the Beirut blast, the World Bank shifted toward more helping fragile communities and so on. The newcomers that 331 helped to establish didn't manage to raise their successor fund. And they are being dragged by other ecosystems. So a lot of them are, like any startup, they wish to set up in Dubai, like Nassif mentioned, or in other hubs in the region, because they believe they can capitalize on their know-how and to launch their second fund in the region, not in Lebanon. So this access to finance as well, we are, as a financial professional, as investors, we are suffering from that, unfortunately. Other initiatives managed to do, USAID, I believe, I don't know if Nicola is with us today, but managed to get additional financing to continue their initial initiative with IM Capital. They raised a new fund to help the startup called the SOS Venture or SOS Fund. The historical players, being BNY or MEVP, managed to raise new funds, but outside of Lebanon, because they already have a track record with other LPs, non-331 LPs. So this is the situation today. So access to finance, okay, it's a problem at the level of the startup, because as well it's a problem at the level of intermediate players, people that bring the money into the ecosystem. So this is in a nutshell. Going back to the problems as well, definitely infrastructure. A lot of us mentioned infrastructure, but I would like to emphasize on the legal infrastructure. If we take 2014 or 2015 being the year zero for our ecosystem, where we've had like a lot of VCs and so on, nothing evolved positively. The ease of doing business, like honestly, it's a mess. The investment tools that we need as investors to, like a simple example, safe agreement, convertible notes, we don't have these tools. They've launched an initiative called PIC, if I'm not mistaken, Private Investment Company. Honestly, it's better to remain with the old holding company than shifting to this new initiative, because as well, it was amended by the parliament or one of the committee, and we went back to square zero with this law. So the legal infrastructure, how to open a company, the ways to open a company, to finance it with different tools, being equity, debt, hybrid financing, quasi-equity, all the usual suspect of tools that usually we use. Closing a company, because as we know in our sector, it's like we invest seed level, startup, and it happens that the majority of them shut down. So shutting down a company in Lebanon is a real hassle. And none of these evolved during the last 6 years. So honestly, it was like we lost 6 years of our life, and now we've hit the crisis, and the priority is no longer there. So go back to square zero. However, I still believe that we can build on what we've already done during the last 6 years to highlight the successes that we've already, because we have some nice story to sell, and to sell Lebanon, as Jihad mentioned, being kind of a back office for startups. We should not shy encouraging our startups to set up offices or head offices or holding companies abroad in order to navigate this difficult period, by keeping part of the employees here in Beirut. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I go back to the panel. I think there is Ali. How do these statements sound to you, making Lebanon a back office? making Lebanon, putting activities, holding companies outside. What are your problems?
In fact, what we are doing, hello everyone first, and thank you for this great gathering. In fact, to give you a little bit an insight, Creapix is an ambidextrous company. We specialize in advertising and digital innovation and multimedia. So we have branches in Dubai, in Doha, in Riyadh, and with our central kitchen being in Beirut, employing over 20 Lebanese Joule. So we really need to know that Lebanese are considered like as a brand name and a beacon of innovation in the region. We have that market awareness, that contextual sense of the region. Due to the fast and rapid digitalization, we have in fact grown exponentially during this period. We have created more jobs in Lebanon. We have employed more Lebanese talents. We're helping them stay in Lebanon and bringing capital back to Lebanon. Our companies outside Lebanon is being able to expand to multiple regions, but at the same time, we're being able to create more jobs. We're creating more talents. We're trying to prevent that brain drain that, in fact, our major fear. And speaking about like the pandemic, we have also created a digital platform. It's called VExpo, and maybe you're familiar with the virtual event thing. I noticed a panelist also is sharing like his virtual event. So we have created a virtual event, 100% Lebanese made, to provide international market access to Lebanese companies, even though its main target is international audience, but we're giving special consideration to Lebanese companies to help them cope with the situation as a part to reaching out and helping with the current situation.
You sound like everything is perfect.
In fact, in 2017, I'm not sure, maybe it was a hunch or it was a gut feeling, but we have moved most of our business to outside Lebanon. And in the pandemic, during the pandemic, everything went digital. COVID-19 was the fast forward catalyst for digital transformation. So to be honest, we have made the best out of it, and we have created VExpo, our platform. All of our customers now move their business online. We work a lot with pharma companies. So also pharma companies stopped doing their face-to-face meetings and moved into virtual events and Zoom meetings. So we created a sort of hybrid. So they had to give a little bit of sparkle to their meetings. So, and we were there for the rescue.
Sounds like we have an example that gives us new hopes that if we use the opportunities from Lebanon and have a good sense of where to go, we can actually even succeed against the odds that everyone talks about in Beirut most of the time. Carl, what is your perspective, Carl Naim, on the odds and on the challenges and problems?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making this this happen today. I'm going to speak from someone who wore multiple hats, and I think some people in the panel have known me was wearing different hats, but I was both an entrepreneur with a startup that moved from Dubai to Lebanon in 2016 to supposedly take advantage of the 331, and then moved into fintech and setting up a coding school called Hobbiton in Lebanon, and now also involved, like Michel, on the Impact Fund, trying to support Lebanese industrialists in Lebanon. So you might call us crazy for trying 3 times to try and do something with Lebanon, but we're still hoping that there is a way that something is actually going to work. For me, if I'm going to go back to the 331, and I think one of the biggest flaw that unfortunately didn't help Lebanese startups at the time, and one flaw that we realized when we moved from Dubai to Lebanon, when everyone was moving from Lebanon to Dubai, is the legal framework that is completely inexistent in Lebanon for the tech industry. And when I talk about legal framework, I talk about the ability of issuing shares, having employees own shares in the companies, stock options, and many others. And these are the biggest drawbacks of that 331. Also, I guess the biggest point that blocked it is forcing companies to actually have their main office in Lebanon, which is something that would immediately handicap any startup trying to fundraise from international investors that would never be comfortable with having a holding in Lebanon because of the whole legal framework around it. So I think this was the biggest issue of that 331, and where it got us today is that eventually most Lebanese companies and talent decided to set up their main offices abroad, and then keeping their back office in Lebanon, which I would also completely agree with my colleague from ESA that this is the future for the Lebanese tech industry. Finally, in terms of our education system, I know Lebanon has been bragging for many years about the strengths of their education system, but let's not live in the past and look at the future. Yes, Lebanese speak 3 languages, Arabic, English, French, and I think that's the biggest advantage of a Lebanese talent. But today, when it comes to actually real skills, digital marketing, software development, I think universities in Lebanon are still really lacking and lagging compared to their counterparts, maybe in Dubai or even in developed markets like the US and Europe. And I think that's why it's primordial to have those initiatives like SE Factory, like Cody, like Holberton. I know there's a new player coming in town, WasU, to try and really get the skills of that talent really up to speed and up to par with their counterparts in the rest of the world. Because we cannot just be a population or a talent that speak 3 languages. We need to also speak the languages of the future, which are tech. And I think there's a lot that's being done, but there's a lot of help that is needed there too to support those kind of initiatives. Life Network is one of the biggest supporter of those initiatives by trying to fund them. And I think there's so much that can still be done. The legal framework, we talked about it. This is primordial to anything else to be able to set up companies, the ease of doing business, the ease of fundraising. While the legal framework is still not here, it will be very hard, and it will be practically impossible to compete with our regional counterparts like the UAE, Saudi, Kuwait, and others. And you can see that today. If you look at the average size of funding in the UAE for a seed or a Series A compared to where it was 2-3 years ago, we were talking a few $100,000 for a Series A. Now you see Series A of 5 million to 10 million and above. So the size of those investments are now catching up with Europe and the US. Yet it's a much smaller market, but the frenzy is there because the regulatory framework is there, the talent is easy to source, and the ease of doing business and setting up a company in 1 week is what's making it happen, which is something we don't see, unfortunately, today in Lebanon. In terms of impact investment, and I'm going to join Michel on that, as Cedar Oxygen, we have been trying to gather the DFI community around the world, the impact funds around the world, to try and support from afar, and even not being involved with government initiatives, but private initiatives to support the Lebanese economy. Today, we focus on the industrial sector. We obviously would love to be able to also help the ICT sector in the near future. But the message we get today from all those DFIs and impact funds, and we spoke to over 120 of these around the world, is they are all in wait and see mode until a government is being formed. So, and obviously the IMF reforms that are also still lingering. So today we're kind of facing the chicken and egg story where everyone wants to help, but they are unable to help until there is a government in place, until we understand how this whole dollar issue is going to get resolved, all those different rates for the Lebanese pound. So the cry for help today is we need, as private initiatives, to be able to band together, to have a supported front, to kind of give that confidence to that international sector that is willing to help. But today they only see very initiatives that are just working in silo and not working together. And I think it's important to build that ecosystem to work hand in hand, support across the whole value chain, from educating our talent to supporting that talent like accelerators to set up their companies, maybe abroad or in Lebanon. Use the diaspora network, which we're all proud of as Lebanese, saying we have the strongest diaspora around the world, getting them involved in helping funding, and then being able to then get international community like DFIs and non-Lebanese to then help. But we need to help ourselves first before we go out for ask to the international community.
Well, too many times I've heard people say in Lebanon, oh, we need to get the support by country XYZ, and before we can decide anything, even before we can have a government. And as someone who is not raised in Lebanon but came from outside and fell in love with this country, I still don't understand why we would actually need foreign sponsorship by any entity, be it multilateral or even one country in this region or far farther apart. So I hope when I hear that we are now hopefully getting rid of zombie companies, we are getting rid of distortions of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Such distortions will always creep in as far as the conventional understanding goes when you have artificial injection of capital. And so if we get all these impact funds come into Lebanon at one sudden moment after we have a government, I really don't know how we will manage this scenario, but let's consider that a problem to be solved when it comes. I think there is Amin, you are with us, but I have little information of you. Would you introduce yourself and tell us how you see the problems?
Thank you very much. My name is Amin Ghraib. I work with Al-Fanar, and I'm working with Michel on the launch of an impact fund, which is regional. It covers the MENA region with a specific focus on Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan. So we are in the pre-marketing phase for that fund. The fund will be an impact fund. So our approach to investment, to any investment, is the following. We have two prerequisites. One is the financial return, which has to be positive. And second, the social impact, which has to be measurable and scalable. The ICT sector is typically not rich in terms of social impact. However, there are many sectors that are tech-enabled that can be impact-rich, which are actually the focus of our approach. It could be education, agriculture, agro-food, finance, etc. To me, just to stay within the topic, but not repeat a lot of things that were said that I agree with in terms of the infrastructure and the skills, etc. To me, there's a big problem today when it comes to the local market in terms of tech-enabled industries, which is that technology is, Lebanon is a poor country and it's getting poorer by the day. And affordability is a key barrier to technology. And in that sense, I think that I would be, and I think everyone should be worried that the socio-economic crisis may lead to a reduced access to technology in Lebanon. So if you look today at the use of technology in Lebanon, whether it's mobile penetration currently at 68%, internet penetration 78%, social media penetration around 60%, I think we should expect these numbers to drop in the context of tomorrow's Lebanon. As someone said before, we shouldn't stay in the past. Unfortunately, we are heading to this kind of situation that is very relevant to us as an impact fund. if we take a brief look at Venezuela, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by making the comparison. The penetration rate of mobiles in Venezuela has dropped from 100% in 2014 to around 58% in 2019. The same thing is happening in smartphone penetration. It's currently 38%, one of the lowest in the world. We can look at other indicators like the usage gap and other indicators of technology penetration. And I'm concerned as an impact fund that there will be a lot of social impact coming out of this, and that can be addressed in multiple ways. So the first question I would ask is, for those, and also I will be looking for investment opportunities in these areas that I think are not enough covered by the ecosystem, but that may become a necessity in the foreseeable future. The first question is, for those who are vulnerable communities, and it's an increasing number, but that still have access to technology, how can they access services that are otherwise difficult to access? Education, finance, and other. You may have seen news, for example, in Egypt a few weeks ago, a company called Khazna has raised seed funding to provide mobile financial services to over 20 million underbanked Egyptians. We need to have more and more of these initiatives, I believe, in Lebanon. The second thing is, as people get less and less connected because of the crisis, how do we ensure that technology is made affordable and available for the vulnerable? What are the low-cost, low-budget options that need to be introduced in the country? And the third point is, how do we ensure that the digitization of services doesn't exclude a growing portion of underserved populations from essential services because they are losing the access to technology? A very brief example, and I leave it here for now. For example, the COVID permit or the registration for COVID vaccines. If you don't have a smartphone, there are points in time where you cannot go to the supermarket to buy your basic needs because you cannot get this COVID permit. So as an impact fund, we are approaching, of course, technology-enabled sectors, companies, the ICT sector as well, with the few exceptions that have a social impact. But there are a lot of questions that were not relevant in the old Lebanon that are becoming relevant today. And there are very few initiatives, as far as I can see, that address those issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, when it comes to the COVID permit, I have to confess that even as owner of a smartphone, at some points I found it extremely challenging to actually get the COVID permit app to work for me in English. I found the oldest age that I could appoint to myself to be 10 years old, because every once I went back to 2011, it jumped back to 2021. Anyway, I found a way around that, and thankfully our supermarkets are still allowing us sometimes leniency. But is there anyone from the panel who wants to contribute to the first round still? Did I forget anyone? Or George or Borhan, do you want to say anything at this point?
Thomas?
Yes?
Hi, this is Nicolas Ruhana.
Oh, you are there. Welcome. I didn't have you on my list. Sorry.
Hi. Sorry. I was actually invited, so I'm not sure why.
You are definitely invited, and I sent you the confirmation, I remember, but somehow the name was not on my list. Sorry. Yes, tell us your perspective, especially since Basil informed us that you worked to find other financing. It will be very interesting to hear.
Yeah, but this maybe I will keep it to the second part if there are any solutions, etc. But I want to give a couple of thoughts on what was said, especially going back to Gabby's points. And what I hear, I mean, so far, you know, all these points, you know, access to new markets, you know, the brain drain, financing, these are, I mean, if we had this conversation on the same panel like 2 years back before the crisis, we would have talked exactly the same thing, you know, infrastructure, brain drain, financing, even in the middle of the 331 and the abundance of funding, and you know, they've actually funded like 200 startups with $250 million. People were struggling to have access to finance, and they were even complaining that there is not financing, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, opening up new markets or growing internationally, this is a must, you know, from ages, because Lebanon is a small country, et cetera. So we tell our startups, you have to scale and grow internationally because the market here is small, and obviously opening up, you know, elsewhere. So this has been and will always be. Now with the crisis, obviously this has accelerated, you know, this path. But I mean, this has been there. The and for that you need financing, obviously, and access to finance today is zero. I mean, Bassel said, you know, companies are not just leaving, VCs are leaving. All the VCs, all the 331 funds are now in Dubai. Okay, so the team is not even here, and so let alone the money is not there, and even so there's a really serious lack of financing, which I mean will hinder any growth for companies, you know, going up and trying to grow outside and open up new markets. I agree, Lebanon as a back office, again, this has been a motto for everyone. I mean, the CMEs, you know, design in Lebanon, manufacture in China, and sell for the world. This is, you know, the motto that we've been doing for the past, you know, X number of years. So this is, again, it's not new. And today, it's even more so because of the devaluation crisis, you know, and the squashing of expenses because of the devaluation. When you get fresh and you have local expenses, you become really very, very competitive. So again, so this is a window of opportunity that people can look at. So what I'm saying is that, you know, this conversation of these points have been there for ages, you know, and today, I mean, they're still relevant, but I think in the middle of this crisis, we have to, you know, do some firefighting and try to come up with, you know, concrete initiatives to, at least on the short term or even medium term, because we don't know. It's so uncertain these times that, I mean, we need to do something about it. And I'm interested to hear really on the second part, thoughts of the panelists and my colleagues on that. On the ecosystem, I mean, whatever we can say about 331, but at some point we had accelerators, we had funds, you know, it was a thriving ecosystem. Today, there is no ecosystem. It's not, we cannot call it an ecosystem. It's not even a landscape. So all the blocks have disappeared. I mean, if you take Jihad, maybe the only accelerator is the Smart ESA, and they don't give equity. So it's like, they don't provide financing, or maybe little. But then what happens to those that graduate from ESA? So there used to be, you know, blocks that follow this accelerator that are no more. You know, the angels disappeared. There are lullers that no one wants. From investors or from the banks, you know, there are no banks. Banks are inexistent. So we are really in dire situation, and we need to we're back to square one in the if you want to call it an ecosystem. We're really back to square zero, and the thing is, we have to rebuild accelerators, rebuild angel, rebuild trust in this ecosystem if you want to have, you know, new or fresh money injected in the ecosystem. So this is key today, and the question is, do we really do it? Do we have the time? Do we have the luxury? Because these uncertain times are there for, I don't know, maybe 1-2 years. We really don't know, and so we are in firefighting mode, and I'm really interested to see what can be done. You know, really short term, quick wins, low hanging fruits to be able to save whatever can be saved from the startups or the ICT sector. You know, ease of doing business have been, you know, very difficult for a long time. It's not new. So I'm sorry. So these points have been there for ages, and we need to, I think, you know, try to, because of the crisis, because of COVID on top of the crisis, try to really see what can be done, at least on the short term, or short to medium term to be able to get out of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we have Wissam. Would you tell us how do you see the situation in terms of what are the biggest problems for you?
Hi, Thomas. Hi, everyone. First, I'm going to be very brief because I agree on everything has been said on this panel till now. I think it's all about picking our battle right now. We have so many issues, so many problems. There's some stuff that we can deal with at individual or as a group base, but other stuff that are not really in our hands. So basically, we have three models, right? For the ICT sector, the Silicon Valley model, which is not valid anymore because of all of the problems that Nicholas just mentioned right now, the lack of funding, the complete destruction of the whole blocks, the whole block system to generate startups and successful stories. So I don't think it's a valid model anymore. And then you have the mass outsourcing, which also not a valid model for Lebanon because we lack the economy of scale, the lack of talents and the things that were already mentioned on this call as well. And you have the premium services, the premium outsourcing services. And this is what I believe in it. And we can discuss it in a later stage during this session. Now, the major challenges that we've been facing, first, the brain drain, of course. This is our highest risk today. Access to talents as well. Infrastructure. I mean, we're being threatened every single day by power outages, internet outages, and it cannot really continue like this. I get messages from our customers in the United States, videos for Lebanese responsible people, ministers and general managers claiming that they cannot really provide internet access to the Lebanese people beyond January 31st. And this happened in December. I got the video from a US customer. I mean, I'm not going to get into this right now, but threatening us publicly and by responsible people is not really acceptable because it's affecting our credibility, even for all these successful companies today. And then you have access to markets, and it also has been mentioned by our colleagues. I mean, even going to the nearest countries, like the GCC countries, Dubai, I'm sure that you all know that it's not really easy anymore to get a visa to Dubai for any Lebanese company. So I'm just listing the problems, but again, I am positive. And for the past year, we hired more than 75 engineers in Lebanon, in Beirut, and we're currently hiring much even more for this year. We're going to discuss more about what we are doing if you'd like to learn more about it and the things that we see it as a potential solution for the Lebanese situation. But I mean, these are the main three problems that we face today: brain drain, access to market, and infrastructure challenges.
You have to, sorry, yes, sir, what was your...
I mean, this is very interesting. He can
yes, definitely.
On this, the second part, and any resources are welcome.
Definitely, we would like to receive anyone's papers, studies, and project proposals, particularly since this is our strongest panel in participation. And I almost hesitate to say that I would love to hear even more from more participants, but on the point of the question if there are no more accelerators or acceleration programs, I would have loved to hear the input of Nadim Zaza, but I'm not sure that he could join us as he hoped to from New York. Nadim, are you here? In that case, I just ask our friend Alexi.
No, I think let's skip because the list is so fresh in our minds.
Yes.
I guess we're all aware of the problems. We can skip that part and just go to the second.
Okay, then in the interest of streamlining our efforts, I may just allude to a few questions that you were sending me in preparation for this panel. One question complex was, for example, how much actual job creation can be done with the knowledge economy tech startups? If the job creation, some of the estimates that I saw in the past, particularly by foreign-sponsored accelerators were quite ambitious, but I'm not sure that this number, even in direct and indirect and induced job creation, will be as valuable as the overall change maker effect and acceleration effect that the tech enablement and the interaction with other industries could deliver. So I see myself, I see the ecosystem in the entrepreneurship as more of an multiplier into other industries, but not really have a strong view that they will be creating tech opportunities quickly. But if you have solutions how this can be increased, I'd be happy to know. Another aspect is the fintech. The misery of fintech in Lebanon might have to do something with regulatory restraints, but maybe there are other things that can be done to boost fintech into the sector that it could be, because nobody I have met told me fintech is a bad idea. Just nobody I met also showed to me how great fintech was working in collaboration with those Lebanese enterprises, Lebanese banks, financial intermediaries, insurance companies, and others in the sector that should be using fintech and not just buying them up in order to own them. But perspectives on that, I would be very happy to hear yours. Then, of course, we mentioned the need for the regulatory framework and the legal framework. We all, I think, are in agreement that this is a dire need. But do we have solutions how to speed it up apart from setting up our own country and creating a new set of laws from scratch, which will probably take about a century if we try to break off from Lebanon in that regard. So how to address the legal challenge, that is one question also that came. And then how to mitigate the high-risk elements, including brain drain infrastructure, and how to expand our market reach. We talked about, we had everyone be alerted to the access of markets priority by Gabi. So how to actually find a solution for better market access, including maybe the avoidance of fake news that deter markets or investors, but also how to make credible stories that we can circulate and actually hopefully beat the avalanche of fake news and propaganda and even the avalanche of genuine bad news that seems to happen in Lebanon for the last period. So if for your solutions, for your proposals, for your visions, please don't hold yourself back. Speak fast, speak quick, and tell us everything. How shall we start? We can start up at the panel. Let's say, Gabi, tell us your first solution.
Oh my God. Oh my God, this is a big responsibility. You want me to give you solutions? I mean, listening to Nicolas, made me feel completely depressed. I mean, he's saying that all what we have said are old stuff, and that we have something, much more urgent, which is actually to solve the Lebanese crisis. So this is what is practically, the most important thing to do now is to solve the Lebanese crisis. In my opinion, we will never solve the Lebanese crisis, because if we solve this one, another one will arise, and then another one, and we will never finish. It's been like this for the past 450 years, and this will not stop. Okay, so we need to take our fate into our hands and decide to do things the way Wissam Youssef and CME Offshore are doing. They are doing it with their own muscle. Okay, So this is the only way to do things. Never rely on the government, never rely on the public sector, never. It will not happen, for the moment at least, unless we exterminate, the oligarchy and we come up with a new people in place. But we can do things on our own. And when I enumerated the list of the list of requirements that the companies have told me that those are the most important things to do, the first thing was, and by far, by everybody, was the access to market. Access to market. Give me customers, I don't need anything else. Give me customer, I don't need an infrastructure, I will find a way. Give me a customer, I will not need, okay, fine. The rest is also important, but this is the most urgent thing for companies to be able to continue. The market. And the market is the international market. The global market, actually. In my opinion,
yes.
Go ahead.
No, I just thought that access to market will be generated maybe by building our Lebanese collaborative brand and helping our network.
Yes.
But
yes.
Can I go next? Can I go next? لحظة Gabby, refer to me. I just wanna بتصلح شغلي. So I mean, when you're done.
Go ahead now. Let's make it live.
I never said I want to solve the Lebanese crisis. I said I want to solve the SME or the startup crisis. It's not the Lebanese crisis. We cannot solve the Lebanese crisis. كل واحد will try to solve the crisis or whatever crisis we can solve in our sphere, in our ecosystem, in my space. I'll try to do whatever I can do in my space. Wissam in his space, Carl, everyone. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not solving the Lebanese crisis. And the points that you've mentioned, Gabby, and I agree. And I said that's what we preach. Growing outside Lebanon, etc. And my worry today is that I want to help this company grow. And if it's a priority, fine. Today, how I can help those companies grow outside Lebanon, how I can help them get access to finance. The thing is that I want to do this today with this crisis. This is the important thing. It's how to do it and we need to pivot. And when I said that, when you go back 2, 3 years or 4 years, and these points are the same, and we used to address them differently. And today, they're still and we need to address them differently. As if they're crisis. This is the thing. I'm not going to solve Lebanese crisis. It's to solve these crises, help them achieve what they want with these. This just to منع الالتباس and for the avoidance of any doubt.
Fine. Fine.
If I may cut in here, I think the overall perception.
Yes, Faris. Yes.
Sorry, just a second. Now we have a word message from Faris. So please, Faris.
Sure. I totally agree with Gabby and Nicolas on their suggestion. And Nicolas was only saying that we need to address the direct issues now, things that we can solve without going back to issues that we know we cannot solve. And I totally agree with him. So anything related to regulatory framework, let's forget about it. Okay, I've been part of redrafting laws for more than 15 years. It's even before the crisis, it was impossible to do anything. So I think we really need to focus on firefighting, as Nicolas said, and there should be, if we say the 3 main points are access to markets, access to finance, not capital, finance, and the brain drain, then probably we should be very creative finding solutions for the 3 of them. Now, Gabby's remark about CME, yes, CME has been there for a very long time. Not everybody is lucky to have been able to build such a business model. And it's not obvious today for an existing company to just shift and become an outsourcing of design as CME did long time ago. So because it all starts with the customer, right? So it's very difficult for an existing company to shift its business model. So definitely we should advise any newcomers to focus on that business model, but we also need to worry about the existing companies more than the startups. I think this is also a very important point. I don't see that now Lebanon is in a situation where it's gonna be a very good ecosystem for people to come up with ideas and invest. We really need to see how we can preserve the companies that were created and how we can help them grow rather than really going and looking for this innovative startup and other things. So to go back to the main...
You said it, Faris. You said it. You said that you have to start with the customer.
Yes.
This is how CME started.
This is where
you have to start with the customer.
Yeah, this is where my suggestions come. So instead of having, not instead actually, in parallel of having incubators and others that helped a lot the ecosystem for the previous 10, 15 years, maybe we should have 2 or 3 people who would come up with a type of incubator that is a sales engine to some of the existing software companies. So let me say why, because I tried for a long period of time to export my products, Gabi, and I know how difficult it is to actually go to a certain market, find the right partner, or to go and do direct sales. Both are very difficult. So some people have this experience. Maybe if there's a company, 1 or 2 that are created, whose job is not to develop software, but their job is to be the sales arm of 4, 5, 6 companies who are already there, have their products and so on. Instead of me going to markets looking for...
Please cut it a bit short.
Yes.
Sorry.
So one second thing is about the financing. So probably all the ideas of fintech that could be directly to help not only the technology, but other sectors in giving debt equity, or excuse me, debt financing to the companies in some form, that would be also extremely helpful. I'll end it here. So of course we can.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate the passion that goes into the discussion. It makes it even better and more exciting. But in the interest we have, I think Wissam mentioned that he wants to speak. No, I have Mr. Lee raising his hand. Okay. I also have.
Hello. Yeah, So from my side, I think specifically for the point related to access to market, I think we need to leverage the Lebanese diaspora, whether in Europe or in North America. And this is a key point for us to build on, let's say, the emotional connection between the Lebanese diaspora and the Lebanese community who's living today in Lebanon. And there are a lot of, I'm not saying that we should target the Lebanese diaspora to get business the Lebanese way, of course not. But all what I'm saying is that we have success stories in Lebanon. We have enough success stories in Lebanon to build a nice model, to promote build on the success stories, and then approach the Lebanese diaspora with this model, with a model that creates jobs in the Lebanese market. This is the first thing that I would give a high priority on it. And this is something that we already started, 2 years ago, when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs appointed the new commercial attaché of the Lebanese Republic and all over the world. And we had a gathering with them where we briefed them on all our activities, the main ICT companies in Lebanon, including the startups. So, but it stopped there. I think we need to build more on it using the Lebanese economic attaché abroad and the Lebanese diaspora, the ones that are organized in Europe and North America. Now, in terms of brain drain, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry?
No, carry on, but 30 seconds.
Okay. Now, in terms of brain drain, I think this is going to continue. I don't think that this has an immediate solution, and we have to deal with it. And the solutions that we're putting in place today for CME specifically, I'm putting in place something that I call bench line up, where I line up a lot of resources without any actual assignments, but just to mitigate for the risk of losing key resources. And this is something that we could actually afford doing it, because today the prices or the cost of operation is less than what we used to have previously. And I strongly recommend for all Lebanese companies, specifically the ones that are currently doing outsourcing, to queue candidates, to build bench lineups without having real concrete projects for assigning them. This would definitely release them from the turnover problem and reduce the impact on the company.
Thank you. Eli, you were raising your hand?
Yes. We have covered a lot of financial and access to capital, access to market, ease of doing business. And as I shared with you previously, let's say the bright side. The downside currently in Lebanon is a psychological thing, and it is the lack of sense of security. Many people, we have many employees who are well off, well paid, very comfortable in what they are doing, but they are not seeing a bright future in Lebanon for themselves and their kids. So I'm not sure if there is a solution for this. I'm not sure if you can find a solution for security inside Lebanon for our people whom we plan to keep here.
Thank you. Sorry, just two things. I think Michelle wants to tell us something about how we can succeed by turning ICT sector companies into social enterprises. But before I invite you, I invite Jihad to comment. And then also I hope for Nassif to tell us something how we can make Lebanese fintech become very powerful. But first Jihad, then Michelle, then Nassif, please.
I just want to say a few things. I'm just going to jump on what Wissam said and what Nicolas said before. On what Wissam and Nicolas said before. The reality is we need to pick our fights. Realistically, we cannot touch the regulatory law of today, at least in the very short term. We cannot touch the infrastructure. We need to work on something else. And I think that's something else to a little bit limit the brain drain. We won't stop it, but to limit it, we need to start giving a bit of hope to companies and to startups, to existing companies. And yes, you're absolutely right. I think, Faris, you were talking about that. But to give that, I want to say an initiative we started with Beritech, and we're working with Beritech on doing this, but also with Lebanese diaspora groups in ICT and others to create a brand, CedarTech, to basically start. I mean, this is in the process. It's not finalized yet, but it's a very good lobbying groups that are associated with this. This is going to help. We need to frame, in psychology, you frame the mind. I'm going really quickly, but we need to frame the mind, and if we want to start exporting, and when Wissam was saying they go see clients, or when we see clients, and etc. for my own startup, we cannot always be focused on the problems. We need to start looking at positives. There are success stories from this country. What Anghami is doing for the ecosystem is huge for the whole country, but there are lots of others. I mean, we have in our own small accelerator of Smart ESA, we do have successes, companies that are doing $1 million, $2 million that started 2 years ago, fresh money. So my point today is we need to be a little bit, let's bid some hope as much as we can. This CedarTech initiative hopefully is going to be done. Accessing markets, we have to be positive on what's happening. I don't know who talked about the commercial attachés. The reality is companies in Lebanon, they're so negative on anything government related, and absolutely I'm the first one to be like this. But I can tell you, and I will commend the Lebanese economic attaché in Dubai, in the UAE, sorry, he's based in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE. we sent startups to meet with that person, with the economic attaché. He introduced them to markets. He opened doors for them. Same thing happened with the economic attaché in Berlin. Same thing happened with the economic attaché in Paris. They're doing their job. These guys are phenomenal. Some of them are phenomenal, and they're doing their jobs. So it's just. I know it's very hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but we need to start focusing on what we can actually do, the firefighting, pick our battles. Let's start doing the easiest thing. Let's build some hope, and I think last thing I want to say. Sorry, an important. Unfortunately, Michel, I think you sent a chat. I saw you talk about impact, and you said become social enterprises. Unfortunately, even if you take CME, CME is an impact company today, because in the situation we are in today in Lebanon, anyone creating a job and retaining a talent in Lebanon is doing a big impact. Unfortunately, we've gone that low that this is a reality.
Right now, sorry, I interrupt and go to Nassif for this minute. And Michelle, you are on.
Yeah, sorry, I missed what Jihad said because I was frozen for a second. So basically what I wanted to say is that I truly believe, and we've seen it, and Karl Naim has mentioned it as well, there is a lot of impact funding that can come to Lebanon. So access to finance can be solved if we encourage businesses in Lebanon to have a social impact, to measure it, and to communicate on it. But I also think that access to markets and getting more support from the diaspora, getting them engaged, can also happen more if we transform organizations into social enterprises, because all studies have shown that when a consumer is faced with a product and service from a social enterprise versus an SME or a regular business, 90% of the time, they will prefer to buy from the social enterprise. So this offers opportunities for access to markets as well. But I also want to go back to what Amin was saying before. We don't need to just be focusing on export markets. If a company is providing vulnerable communities, SMEs and MSMEs with access to affordable products and services, then there is a huge business potential there as well. And there are great examples that we can look at in Egypt and Africa. Mark just shared a case study on the chat. So it doesn't have to be only about export markets. It's true that the Lebanese market is small, but there are enough clients for a business to be successful. And one last thing that I want to say, which is linked to my personal experience, I also believe that if we have a stronger social impact sector, we can also reverse the brain drain. I worked outside of Lebanon for 20 years in the private sector, and I came back to Lebanon to work in the social impact sector, and I'm not going anywhere because I am so motivated and so inspired by this sector and the potential and the social entrepreneurs I work with. So we can actually keep entrepreneurs in Lebanon if they feel that their life has a meaning and that they are giving back to society. So all ecosystem players, investors, donors, we should be focused on social enterprises. It can make a huge difference for Lebanon.
Thank you. I think one message that I want to pick up on from Jihad, and a message that I want to pick up from you, the message is don't just diss a diplomat because he is connected to the government. There are some very good diplomats out there who are working very hard. I met some of them myself. When I came to Lebanon, I was very impressed with some of them. And also in the private sector, there are not only Michel, but definitely Michel and many others who are very strongly motivated. We have encountered these people as I have encountered them as journalists and also as NGO activist myself. I see that the future of Lebanon can be shaped by looking and giving hope, definitely, but also we have to be balanced. We do not want to downplays the downside until it looks positive. I mean, two negatives giving a positive yes, but that's only a mathematics. Bad government decision does not automatically translate into an economic opportunity, and that's why I asked Nassif, how can we activate the fintech sector to actually fulfill its potential rather than just talking about inclusive economy and all these lovely buzzwords?
Sure. I mean, two points that have been raised so far, which are very important, are the access to market and the access to capital. On the first point, I've seen a recent effort by a quasi-governmental body. It's not really publicized yet, but I want to share it because I think it's important and it tackles the ability to leverage our diaspora. So there's a quasi-governmental body called the World Lebanese Cultural Union, الجامعة اللبنانية الثقافية في العالم. They have currently a very active board. It's trying to enable connectivity between Lebanese diaspora, and this is touching on many of the notes that I've heard. Enabling connectivity will enable business, and to do so, they are, and you'll be surprised, they are digitizing this effort. So they are going into a platform called Diaspora ID. And this Diaspora ID, it's an app that you can download currently as we speak. And it has all the national councils and continental councils and connections of Lebanese diaspora in the world. So this is one way. You can tell me I can find people on Facebook. Yes. But do you find their emails? Do you find their titles? Do you find their phone numbers? Do you find... This is one effort that is being done currently. It's a pragmatic effort to enable connectivity, and this is very important. So that's on, I hope that this will help on going to market. On the access to finance or capital, I have a main point here. We have been raised over the past 6,000 years on being traders, and traders are greedy. So in the past 20 years of my career, I've done valuations and transactions with people, and the most greedy were the Lebanese in terms of valuations. This cannot sustain this ICT sector. I'm not saying do not ask for good valuations. I'm saying we are a country in crisis. You are in need of finance. You do have great ideas, yes. But why should you be greedy? Why not defer your gratification? Why seek instant, immediate relief? Why do you want to be Elon Musk without going through Elon Musk's journey? He failed so many times before succeeding. Steve Jobs had to be kicked out of his firm before succeeding. So why do you want the instant gratification in terms of valuation? Let's not do that. Let's build more deferred options for investors to come in. It's already a high-risk investment that you're asking people to jump into. They have lost their money in banks locally, and you're asking them to finance startups, which by definition is a risky business. 1/10 failure, 1/10 success is a very good ratio. I think it's much less than that. But how can we convince investors to finance you? One, by building nice and easy to read pitches. It's not about, if I tell you right now, I have a solution for insurance underwriting, claims management, and accounting, and I stop there, you will not understand a thing of what this does. Why is it important for insurtech companies or insurance companies to have such a software? Because it enables them today to solve in 2 seconds what a great claims auditor needs 2.5 minutes to do. Tell me that in your pitch, please. If you don't tell me that, I will not understand it as someone that is coming from outside the insurance technology. That's one. Two, build reasonable projections. Do not try to sell fish in the sea. No one sells fish in the sea. Do not confuse yourselves with your company's potential and your current valuations. Apple has not been that great 20 years ago. Amazon was not the largest company 20 years ago. Valuation is sensitive, it's time sensitive. So if you factor in this psychology in your negotiations, and if you defer your gratifications based on results, we will be able to attract more capital towards your end.
Thank you. I mean, it is a very interesting site, even though I dare to tell me more about the insurance solution, as it's a pet project of mine. But before I go back to the panel, I want to ask Bassel, so what is your newest solution when we need access to capital? Give us hope.
Actually, I've been trying to solve this equation between brain drain and access to market, because I've noticed there is, you mentioned, Thomas, this brand name issue. So if we need to have access to market and to clients to help our colleague to get new clients, we need to work on our brand name and to improve it, because at the end, the client will, okay, it's a Lebanese company and so on. However, if we destroy completely our brand name, we might retain our talent, because nobody will give us a visa. So this is the equation I'm trying to solve, but it's a difficult one. Going back to access to finance, actually, it's a really, really difficult market. We don't know how to behave as investors. We don't have access to money, to real money. We've been thinking like the last 6 months that, okay, we have a lot of dollars stuck at banks. It will be easy to take them and give them to startup. We ended up, it was a very bad solution for startups and for us, actually. It's not working. It's a moving environment. The value is like, one day is like, it's a 2.2 ratio. The next day it's 3.1 ratio and so on. So honestly, it's this uncertainty surrounding this, as Carl mentioned, this different rates, dollars versus dollars and so on. It's really difficult to navigate. So I have to be modest. I don't know what solution we can bring. Maybe we have to focus on the impact, as Michel said, because it's a new sector. It's a new area where we didn't have like bad habits, where we can convince the international community or the diaspora to bring fresh money into that sector. The economic situation, as Amin with Michel mentioned, that also create a new opportunity. Maybe we should look at this angle, because it's a new area in Lebanon. And we can bridge it with fintech, where although it is, as you mentioned, Thomas, a flashy word, financial inclusion and so on, but the reality today that we will be facing financial issues, new ways to finance peer-to-peer lending, peer-to-peer equity financing, all the words that are sexy, but yet to be proven that we can implement them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm calling them buzzwords because I hear them sometimes without meaning, rather that they are embedded into debates and what we call in German Sonntagsreden, speeches that politicians love to give because they get a thumb up on whatever social network. Now I want to invite George Friend, who maybe will give us the most hope of all. George?
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. I wish I can bring hope. I'll try. But very interesting discussion, extremely useful for us. I'm talking from an observer and donor perspective. But I see that nothing prohibits working on 3 axes in parallel, which is a little bit the approach that we adapted to use currently. First, which is to stabilize. As it has been mentioned, preserve companies as much as possible, preserve jobs. This is the firefighting that has been discussed. But in parallel, the second axis is the explore and find niches of growth, particularly in exports, support them on enterprise level and on sector level. And the third axis is really to prepare for the recovery, to look a little bit beyond the short term and prepare for relaunching the activities in this sector as well as in all other economic sectors. That would include also working on the business enabling environment, preparing with the stakeholders, with the private sector, supporting them to prepare all the needed tools to improve the business enabling environment that has been mentioned as one of the key factors, although not necessarily the number one these days, but also prepare to rebrand Lebanon, and it has been mentioned, all contributing to de-risking and lowering the country risk on enterprises, which will lower costs, open markets, as we have been understanding from all the experts. I will conclude by saying that a lot of ideas can come up from the private sector. USAID is open for partnerships. We invite you to partner with particular projects, including LED, TIF, and others, by presenting your concepts and your ideas, particularly trying to form the hubs or the networks that you mentioned, pushing the exports and working on all levels. This is what I can hopefully conclude on a positive note from our side.
Thank you.
Thomas, over to you.
Thank you so much, George. And I actually am greatly encouraged by this panel. Maybe it is my occupational blindness that I have a soft heart for entrepreneurial spirit of the Lebanese, because being German entrepreneurial spirit is in some ways almost a memory compared to the managerial encounters that you have when you hear German politicians talk about vaccination campaigns and lockdowns and all that. But going back to where we are in Beirut, I think the potential that you are expressing, especially the potential of an impact fund, the potential of the cultural union, my concern, to be honest, in these points are, we want them to be, or I would hope them to be agnostic in terms of fragmented identity. I have had conversations with great people who were focused on small communities. And this dichotomy between a great concept, but another barrier against, oh no, he is not in my whatever community, political party, or political sectarian, whatever it might be, and he's not in my club or my country club, or he didn't go to the same school that I went to, but I only like people who graduated from IC or Lycée or whoever. So all of that, if we can have it as a solution for Lebanon, I will be very hopeful, especially since in the last roundtable we saw that the hospitality and food and beverages concepts are still in the trough. They are still in the phase of realization how bad everything has become. Whereas the other industries, including our own media and the manufacturing and the agro-industry, by my impression, were already in the understanding phase of, right now we can only focus on what we can do. We have to work with the government if we get it, but we have to plan as if we don't know what will happen tomorrow. So the adage, say a different day, same as, is something that applies maybe to our news from the government, but the adage, same different initiative, even though the same problems as were in 2018. We are, to use that word, innovators of heart. So I think that is what I understood, what I identify with the tech entrepreneurship section and the ecosystem in Lebanon. And in that sense, as we are running up on time, I would encourage you, those who want to give most desperately closing word to us to just tell me who wants to give first come, first serve, who wants to say a closing word, and we have about 4 or 5 people who can do that. Amin is raising his hand already, please.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to encourage all companies in Lebanon that think that they have a genuine social impact. And as Jihad said, social impact in a crisis like we're in is easily achieved. I would encourage all companies to model their impact, to measure it, and to have a plan to scale it, because this will allow them with access to market, because it will mobilize the diaspora to support this company, either by introducing them to people or by delegating some of their activities to Lebanon. It will help in funding, because there's a lot of investors that will consider the social impact as a form of return that comes on top of financial return. So the MENA region has been lagging the rest of the world significantly in the past 10 years, but you are seeing signs of catch-up, because in Egypt, for example, more and more companies are measuring and disclosing their social impact, which is the bread and butter of impact funds. So with an industry that is getting so big, $715 billion, as Michel said, in 2019, relative to 50 billion only 10 years ago, it's a massive, massive growth. The MENA region is catching up, and we want Lebanon to be part of it. So that would be, honestly, my encouraging final, a couple of words on the matter.
Thank you. And I can add the promise that at least we at Executive will do our best to monitor the claims of social impact and make sure that they are not just whitewashing or greenwashing or whatever washing, but that they are genuine social impact, because that is really what Lebanon needs. Nicola, you have raised your hand.
Yes. On just a few words on the giving hope to Jihad's point, and Faris as well touched on a point. So I Am Capital is a USAID funded project, where we deploy capital. And post blast, after the August 4 blast, we gave up to 2 billion Lebanese pounds as relief to our beneficiaries to be able to cater for their own clients and beneficiaries at the affected areas, so that they can keep working and retain their jobs and retain and address this brain drain, etc. So this is on this front. The second front is, again, we got from USAID an extra $40 million fresh program, where we designed it pre-Thawra, pre-revolution, and then when we got the program, it was after the Thawra. So we had to try to pivot and to come up with quick wins and initiatives that were relevant to the crisis. Now, I'm not going to announce or spoil what we're going to announce soon, but we are working on funds, a direct fund for the startups to go back to Faris's point, not just startups, but growth stage companies that have a potential to scale and to be able to help them, weather this crisis, the storm, till they get further funding. So we will be announcing a lot of initiatives that will, and very quick and very, very, very soon, like every quarter, we're going to announce new funds that will be cater and be relevant to help the existing ecosystem existing. So we look at what exists and the problem that is there, and try to come up with financing instruments that are relevant to help them, grow and weather this storm. Voilà. So stay tuned.
Thank you. We will stay tuned. Now, Faris, your message in 60 seconds, please.
Mute myself. Yeah. I would be really very happy if the community of technology entrepreneurs in this very difficult time collaborate a lot together as a consequence of this meeting that we had today. So I would really like to see us all together meet more frequently and try to solve and find solutions. I would, this is a call to everybody here, Nicola, Wissam, Gabi, everybody else. Maybe it's the time to work all together to find solutions to the sector, not only each one's problems. So this is just a call for everybody.
Thank you so much. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Eli, one minute for us too.
To finish on a positive note, I also wanted to take this opportunity, and being also an Ashoka Fellow and impact-driven social entrepreneur as well, on the aside of the business part, I want also to launch an initiative tonight, and I will communicate this with executive management to allow to use our platform vExpo for an event to enable all tech companies and to enable all companies that will outsource or export their services outside Lebanon. It would be free of charge, of course, and we'll have a selection based on criteria who's employing Lebanese, who has in Lebanon. It's for the whole community. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much. Now, talking about outsourcing and collaboration with the diaspora, for the past 12 months, pretty much exactly, I have seen more and more promising and hopeful outsourcing and Lebanese diaspora outreach activities. We did not have enough time to discuss details of every one of them, but I assure you they are out there. You probably know better than I do. And I assure you that this will be part of the continued discussion as far as we can manage it, because it is really an important element. And I can only reiterate here what George told us: preserve jobs, find niches, and prepare for recovery is one item. And I want to read in closing one sentence from the economic roadmap of executive. Point 16.1 as policy priority is for develop entrepreneurship support. And it reads, integrates the entrepreneurship vision for Lebanon into the national economic vision and enable capital guaranteed funding for companies that meet predetermined criteria in line with this vision. I think what I hear from you, what I hear from the other roundtables, this thing is spot on to develop from the ecosystem that we have, which is the most successful one. The entrepreneurship ecosystem is the most innovative one that I am aware of, at least, and go and grow it into the national system by taking it to the four other industries that we have been discussing in this roundtable. With this word, I can proudly and humbly shut up and hand over to Yasser to give us his input.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for your priceless input. Executive has been witnessing the rise and the development of entrepreneurship in Lebanon, or tech entrepreneurship, or ICT, for the last 20 years. Nicola and I and other gray-haired participants today were part of the activism from the onset. And before the environment was spoiled from its beginnings. We tried to force anchor entrepreneurship in Lebanon, while entrepreneurship cannot be limited to geography. And we also spoiled it by triggering a competition that is behind the overvaluations, and everybody was pursuing only 331 money, which also ended up being a capital guarantee, which is a capital guarantee initiative that guaranteed projects that do not require a capital guarantee. So today we have an opportunity to sit together, rethink our enabling environment, and a lot has been done in that respect, whether it's Smart ESA, whether it is many others that work really hard in setting a proper, if you want, a proper guidelines and anchor it in principles rather than anchoring in interests. And yes, entrepreneurship, and if we think about design thinking, it's all about impact investing, you know. And in the last 15 years, we saw from ethical investing to green bonds, to governance, to ESG guidelines, to impact investing. This will continue to grow, and the responsibility and the expectation from the entrepreneurship environment to provide human-centered and human-anchored solutions will not stop. This would keep on grow the more we expect companies to have a purpose. We have an opportunity to go back today to before the 2014, liberalize our ecosystem, our entrepreneurship, our tech ecosystem, understand that it is from Lebanon for the world, not for Lebanon, from Lebanon to Lebanon only. And make sure that all the effort, or look at what is the effort that is remaining that will allow entrepreneurs who, after all, have to showcase whether it's the social entrepreneurship, the tech entrepreneurship, or any entrepreneurship to the world, and the VC money will come. Caesar Oxygen Fund is one of those beautiful initiatives. I'm sure Credly advisors, among others, can tell us that wherever there is a good entrepreneurship idea, regardless of the geography, because it is risk money anyways, it is the concept that is worth the money. As long as we're able and we have the environment and the skills and the soft skills to make sure that we have a rollout of beautiful concepts that address impactfully human-centered problems, the VC money will be available. And this is very special and within that space, because this is not available in other industries. Manufacturing has their own problems, and they are much more affected by pastel than entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, somehow, it's only about, and the value is in the ideas and the quality of ideas. And for these ideas to continue to flow, we need to create for them an enabling environment that is well-nourished. And we have so much that is still there to make sure that we can preserve and grow Lebanese entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you. In closing then, I thank all of our panelists or roundtable participants in this hybrid and I believe successful, even if I say so myself, roundtable event. And I thank you for your sincerity, your passion, your honesty, and your solutions. And there will be much more to be done, obviously. I also thank our executive support team. I thank our interpreters. I thank our tech team. I thank Hotel Jeffinor Rotana. Hotels are really in a tough spot right now. So if you think it is tough to be in entrepreneurship now, try running a hotel on the side. It sounds like something you need to do.
To our friends on Zoom, if you were here, you would know that Executive Magazine is treating us to cheese, ham, chicken, desserts. This is hope.
Okay, thank you so much. And on that note, if you... So thanks to everyone, and just if you haven't signed the attendance sheet yet among the roundtable participants in the room, please do so. Thank you again. All mistakes are of course mine, and all successes are collective among all of us. I thank you for helping and contributing and giving so much. Thanks again. Good night.
Bye, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.